class itself is called EDJH 385/EDSEC 380, which is basically, it's a two-part class. One focuses on the middle level learner, and the other portion or the other part of the semester focuses on the high school level learner. And it is a class that's required for all secondary education majors. Usually they take it their senior year prior to student teaching. And then sometimes we'll have some elementary ed if they're also looking at getting a middle school license. I would say the clinical faculty, the clinical components. So anytime that they're able to actually get into the high school and middle school classrooms and teach. And what that teaching looks like may look different depending on what classroom you go into, but anything from making intentional observations, not just sitting in the back of the room, but really looking for particular things like in classroom management or instructional strategies, and then also being in front of a class, teaching on their own, co-teaching with cooperating teachers, those types of things. So really the clinical portion of it.
In the classroom with Krista, she's been a little bit more limited this semester. There's only, there was 4 students for EDJH 385 and 3 students for EDSE 380. But she implements a lot of the strategies that she's teaching us about. I feel like it's more of like rubbing minds. Like if I share something like a blog I've come across, she might share it with the other students and then we'll talk about it, or vice versa, you know, like, hey, I came across this, you know, political argument, you know, let's talk about this, what does this mean for us? And so we're talking about those things. And I feel like I get her experience from teaching to go with me as a teacher instead of just, I'm a student and she's telling me what I need to do. Being in the EDJH 385 and EDSE 380 has prepared me for student teaching a lot more. Previously, it would have been that we would just go from here doing methods courses to all of a sudden we're student teaching. And this has allowed us to be in schools, working with students at a little more of a low stakes, not, you know, this is it moment for us. And so it's helped me learn a little bit more about what to expect when I'm student teaching and getting to watch other teachers and observing them and what they're doing and getting involved with them and asking them questions before I'm just thrown into the deep end and told to swim. Right now, the most memorable moment that I had happened to be the day that Krista was observing me while I was teaching in the middle school, and I was asking students to read out loud, and one student decided that he was going to not only read out loud, but he was going to read all of the punctuation marks that were there as well. So he read 1 period, what is, you know, question, whatever, then he'd say question mark, blank line, and then he'd read the next question. And my initial response was, I'm not going to feed into his behavior and just let him do his thing and pretend like it's not getting to me. But what the cooperating teacher realized in that moment was other students were then going to follow suit. So when I asked another student to read, this cooperating teacher stood up and said, and if you read the punctuation, you will have to read it over again. And when we talked about it later, and I talked with Krista about it, it was more like nipping something in the bud in the beginning. Like, yes, we're not supposed to let them know that they're getting to us, but knowing your students well enough to know that this was going to spiral even worse than where it was at the moment. And in that moment, I realized like how important it is to know your students and your classroom, and that classroom management is something that's going to come with experience, and it's not an experience that I have at this moment. With the course, then Krista kind of coaches me through it, like here's what I saw happening, here's how I see you handled this, and here's how you could do this better. She then takes those moments with my permission. She shared some of the other teacher candidates' moments as well. Here are some situations. How could we handle this differently? And we kind of have real life scenarios. Hey, you had a real student. This was a real moment. How's a different way that this could have been taken care of? And then we kind of plot out, you talk about some of those students you might see in a classroom, like your class clown or the teacher's pet or any variation of things. And now you have students in mind that you can think of and you'd be like, yeah, I had that one student that was like this. Okay, well, how do you handle that student? So it's not just the mythical stereotype student. How do you handle this individual who's showing traits of being a class clown? And ironically, the guy that was reading punctuation was usually a pretty quiet student. He just chose this day to be a class clown. So how do you normally handle him? Like, I was definitely not prepared for him to be a little kooky, and the class kind of teaches you more about having a plan in place for all scenarios all the time, just to have plans always.
Ball State also has a reputation within their teachers college of producing quality teachers who are ready that first year of teaching to go out and really kind of tackle the classroom. So I would say the biggest advantage is reputation, and then just knowing that if you can make it through the program, you're going to be ready. Although your first year of teaching is going to be hard no matter what, you're really going to have the skills and the knowledge that you need to succeed your first year of teaching.